My Amazon insider has given me some more information in regards to the female custodies debacle, and Amazon's involvement in it, which may, at least in part, exonerate Games Workshop. Now, I'm sure all of you know about the female custodies debacle by now, where GW elected to sneak in a short lore story in an upcoming Custodies Codex, where they not even announced, but simply kind of dumped the idea that female custodies were totally a thing there onto the market. And then when people asked, why did you make female custodies, they simply responded with, there have always been female custodies, in an act of damn near unparalleled gaslighting levels, which got the internet up in arms over such a blatant lie. But a lot of people were then speculating that Amazon might be heavily involved in this very weird and seemingly out of nowhere change, particularly as it is very out of character for Games Workshop, the plastic toy manufacturing company, to not announce any plastic toys about female custodies at all. No new characters, no new models, no new features, no new heroes, nothing. Just this one piece of enormous gaslighting and then zip, nilch, null, nada ever since. So, what has come out here is the idea that Amazon were the ones pushing not for female custodies, but for female space marines in its entirety as a part of their lengthy negotiations with Games Workshop. So GW and Amazon are in an agreement to create a Warhammer 40,000 television show starring Henry Cavill, who we might now know a little bit more about his opinion on this as well, but this TV show, of course, is an enormous deal for Games Workshop. It is their final opportunity to get into the mainstream, which they have been so desperately desiring for so very long. And considering that all of GW's previous attempts to getting into that via movies, for example, like Ultramarine, didn't work out very well, and Warhammer Plus is certainly not getting anywhere close to mainstream attention, this is an enormous opportunity for Games Workshop. But apparently, Amazon understands this as well. The negotiations went on for quite a few months, as I've covered previously on this channel, with some back and forth indications like official mailing accounts being created for Games Workshop employees with Amazon, facilitating quick communication, and Amazon also taking down everybody on Amazon's own sites that were selling third-party miniatures or anything that could be kind of confused as GW products. There were also the rumors going around that GW had initially signed, or at the very least signed in principle, an incredibly bad deal that they then needed to renege on and renegotiate aggressively to arrive at something that was at least mildly fair. Well, this might also be the truth, as according to my insider here, the attitude at the Amazon GW meetings reached downright threatening levels, where the two sides were not happy with one another at all, with Games Workshop actually pushing back quite aggressively on the idea of female space marines, probably understanding that to do so would be devastating to their company. I mean, look at the sheer scale of the shitstorm that was created by female custodies, which is not anywhere near as massive a faction as the space marines as well. GW, knowing this would be a terrible idea, pushed back a lot. But Amazon were not willing to give up on this either, and may have carried out various little tactics like threatening to bring back people on Amazon who were selling third-party goods for 40k-related stuff, as they did even take down things like alternative dice sellers and people who were selling bases and so on. That might have been a thing, and they might also have perhaps been talking about leaving the conversation altogether. Now, I will point out though one thing as well, this is a rumor by the full definition of the word. I trust my Amazon insider, I know he works for Amazon, but this is something he heard from a friend within the company again, so this is in essence a friend of a friend telling me this, so pinch of salt and all that, but eventually, he says, GW caved in part, and the female custodies was a compromise solution intended both to ameliorate relationships with Amazon by going, okay, how about this? You'll have your female power armor, but we won't do it with the Space Marines, okay? And also as a way to demonstrate to Amazon that this was not going to go over very well. And indeed, Amazon's bots as well that monitor the feedback that Amazon gets has been noticing a sharp uptick in people sending in complaints about them ruining universes, like the Rings of Power, and mentioning the 40K TV show in specific. Now, these have not been acted upon, nor is there any indication that Amazon is particularly concerned yet, but there is now a sufficiently large enough volume of these complaints ahead of time, to the point where their scraping bot, the software looking for feedback, is picking up on it and going, there's a lot of these, should some human take a look at this, maybe? Do we know what's going on here? What is causing this trend of negative feedback? Which, hey, it might be a wonderful way of teaching Amazon that this might not be something they want at all. As for Henry Cavill, I have also heard something related to him now, namely that he is quite upset about this change, he is pissed at it, but he is not going to walk. Bearing in mind that we don't even know if it is possible for him to walk at this point, as his introduction and, co-starring and producing in this was one of the earliest fundamental piece of news about the Amazon Games Workshop TV show. For all we know, he could be bound hand and foot by contractual obligation and penalties at this point. Alternatively, again, well, it's an Amazon paycheck. I'm not entirely sure I would be willing to turn that down, much less somebody who is an actual actor, and this is being his job. Even more so considering that Cavill, through no fault of his own, beyond being a fan of the things he acts in, has been made a little bit of a pariah in the Hollywood circles because he keeps butting in trying to make the things he's a part of actually faithful to the original source material. A terrible crime indeed. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is indeed quite upset about this, because this is also his main faction, the Adeptus Custodes, as well. Now, what does this mean in a larger setting, though? Well, ideally, Amazon, because we know that they received a lot of negative feedback from Rings of Power, and most importantly, from investors, from the money men, meaning that they are probably, at least in part, hesitant to ruin another franchise deliberately, but at the same time, Amazon is a very woke company. They have DEI initiatives written into their cooperative agreements with all of the companies they enter into cooperations with, which is why it is very, very likely that they did indeed push these demands onto Games Workshop. Which means that they are clearly not deciding to turn around just yet. And if this became a matter of official negotiations, and even more so, it seems likely to assume that Amazon is towing a fairly hard line here with the DEI opposite Games Workshop. This might also be internal forces, mind you, as again, GW is a very big and upcoming IP, and if Amazon could perhaps shape it in the desired way from the very beginning, perhaps they will avoid the Rings of Power backlash because, well, they can shrug their shoulders and say, it was always woke. Of course. I wouldn't be too surprised. As for GW's opposition to the idea, again, it does make a lot of sense, seeing as they haven't pushed the female Custodes things at all, and being a plastic toy manufacturer, they literally only exist to push the thing, and yet they have not. Lending a great deal of credence to the idea that this might simply have been the community team or the writers coming up with this as an alternative and then lying about it to the fans and shutting up about it as an attempt to kind of make this obvious shitstorm blow over as fast as possible, whilst also limiting the damage and pleasing the new Amazonian overlords just a little bit, as GW will be very hesitant. In fact, it will be almost impossible, inconceivable for Games Workshop to walk away from this deal. This is absolutely a make-it deal for GW. If they get this, and they get this right, the potential profits and the increase in their brand recognizability would be enormous. so there is virtually no chance GW will walk away. Which, in turn, is probably something Amazon knows, and knows then that they are going to have a tremendous amount of leverage over GW with which to push their own preferred ideas and agendas, which again, we know from Amazon's official own statements, is DEI. But there you have it. That is the leaks from my Amazon insider. I do consider them to be fairly credible because it does make a great deal of sense. The only thing I would be surprised about is GW being as vehement in opposition to it as they supposedly were, as I am also of the opinion that Games Workshop is a very woke corporation and has been desperately trying to find some way to go woke for quite some time now. Again, they've been willing to denounce the Imperium of Man straight up. They've been willing to change the law already in DEI ways, but nothing quite so obviously blatant. It might simply be that, whilst there are elements of GW that wants to go woke, this might be an indication of an ongoing civil war within GW, with the various factions aligning themselves along woke and anti-woke degrees to try and, fight for internal power and who's going to be making the decisions from now on. Well, Godspeed to the opposition, I hope, in that case. Because if you can keep wokeism out of one more franchise, that would be fantastic, even though you're certainly going to have a long and hard fight ahead of you. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.